And thanks to you at home for joining us for the next hour. Buckle up. I guess that's the right thing to say. It's turning out to be sort of a chaotic night in the news. The biggest developing story in the country tonight, maybe the biggest story yet of this presidency, is the White House apparently abandoning all pretense when it comes to explaining the firing of FBI Director James Comey. As a country, we have obviously never before had a president whose campaign was the subject of an active FBI counterintelligence investigation, so there really is no historical prescription in terms of what you ought to do, in terms of what might count as normal behavior in that circumstance. But still, for the last couple of days, even this White House, in its very unusual situation and with its very unusual relationship to political norms in general, for the last couple of days, even this White House appeared to accept the basic principle that a president should not fire the person leading an investigation into his campaign because the president doesn't like that investigation. I mean, for the past couple of days, the White House at least half-heartedly tried to explain the firing of FBI Director James Comey as something other than what it looks like. They produced a memo from the Deputy Attorney General saying the firing was about the FBI director's handling of the Hillary Clinton email investigation last year. They produced the Vice President of the United States to assure people in his calm, steady way that the president only fired the FBI director because of grave concerns about the FBI director coming from within the Department of Justice. The White House spokesman and his deputy told reporters that the firing was a DOJ decision, that it was all about the wishes of the Deputy Attorney General, that the memo from the Department of Justice was not written at the direction of the president, that the whole process was initiated by the Justice Department. The president knew nothing about it until he saw that memo. But when he saw that memo from the Department of Justice, it left him no choice. Literally, that was the phrase, no choice. For the last couple of days, they at least made a half-hearted case that the president didn't fire the FBI director because the FBI director is leading an escalating investigation into the Russia scandal. The biggest story in the country now, what may be the defining story of this presidency, at least thus far, is that now they have given up on even those half-hearted attempts at pretense. Now they are just going for it. It's like a dare. Basically, they're saying now, yeah, okay, you got us. Yeah, we fired the FBI director to kibosh the Russia investigation. We did. What are you going to do about it?
Did you ask for a recommendation?
What I did is I was going to fire Comey. My decision. It was not.
You had made the decision before they came in the room.
I was going to fire Comey. There's no good time to do it, by the way.
Because in your letter you said I accepted their recommendation. Yeah, well, so you had already made the decision.
I was going to fire regardless of recommendation.
So there was really
he made a recommendation. He's highly respected, very good guy, very smart guy. The Democrats like him, the Republicans like him. He made a recommendation, but regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
When I decided to just do it, when I decided to fire the FBI director, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing is a made-up story. And so I fired the FBI director, who was leading the investigation into the Russia thing. A lot of people are looking at that admission from the president tonight in that interview with Lester Holt. A lot of people are looking at that clip, that tape, that statement by the president, as if what he said there was like almost an accident, right? I think the reaction to that broadly is like, oh, he accidentally blurted out the real reason why he fired the FBI director. But you know what? And I do not mean this in a snarky way. I mean this as an observation. This president frequently sounds like he's just blurting something out accidentally. That's just the way he talks. But what he said there does not appear to have been an accident, because he said it calmly. He knew exactly what he was saying, obviously. He wasn't being badgered into it. He was riffing on his own terms. And he isn't the only one who said that today, because this was the way the professional communication staff at the White House started talking about this matter today from the podium in the briefing room.
Just to clarify one thing you said, the president has encouraged this investigation into Russia. He wants to see it reach its completion sooner rather than later. How has he encouraged it if he just fired the man who was overseeing the Russia investigation?
There are multiple people that are part of this, and it's not just the FBI. You've got the House committee, the Senate committee. Look, again, the point is we want this to come to its conclusion. We want it to come to its conclusion with integrity, and we think that we've actually, by removing Director Comey, taken steps to make that happen. Thanks so much, guys.
You said you'd answer all of them. Speaking of integrity, why not have an independent investigation then? That's what a number of attorney generals are asking.
Thanks so much, guys. Gotta go. Gotta go. By removing Director Comey, we have taken steps to make that happen. I mean, that's what she says there, right? Because we want this to come to its conclusion. We want this to come to its conclusion. We think that we've actually, by removing Director Comey, taken steps to make that happen. That's why we removed Director Comey. So the White House today has just dropped the pretense about why the president fired the FBI director. Yeah, we fired him for the Russia thing. We fired him to stop the Russia thing, to bring the Russia thing to an end. What are you going to do about it? So a lot of people are talking about obstruction of justice today, right? If the president did do what he said he did, if he removed the director of the FBI because he wanted to affect the FBI's investigation into his campaign and its ties with Russia, that would be, I mean, that's the kind of example you might make up if you were teaching a low-level class on obstruction of justice and you wanted to give your young students a crystal clear example of what that might look like, right? In a banana republic where things like that happen. As far as that goes, though, I mean, the remedy for obstruction of justice, if committed by a president, there's only one remedy to that, which is impeachment. I mean, obstruction of justice was the first article of impeachment against Richard Nixon. It was the third article of impeachment against Bill Clinton. Even though the Inspector General of the Department of Justice has now been asked by the House Oversight Committee to investigate the firing of FBI Director James Comey, any such investigation by the Inspector General of the Justice Department, that would only cover the actions of Justice Department personnel. It would not cover the actions of the President of the United States. If the President obstructed justice deliberately with this firing, if he fired the FBI director to affect the Russia investigation, really the only remedy for that is impeachment. And raise your hand if you think this Republican Congress is going to take up impeachment proceedings against the President for obstruction of justice. Really. But let me raise another matter here. Something that has not been discussed elsewhere. But it is about the potential for political interference by the president, by the president's closest advisors, on the Trump-Russia investigation. This one does not start in Washington, does not start at the White House. This one starts where all the meatiest information about this presidency and this scandal starts, which is in the aggressive free press that we are blessed with in this country. Okay? This spring, the Associated Press had two great scoops about the man who was the chairman of the Trump campaign during the time that Trump won the Republican primaries and collected the nomination. Paul Manafort was the chairman, right? He was the chairman through the spring and summer of 2016. Incidentally, when many of the meetings and contacts that are reported to be of interest to investigators allegedly happened between Trump associates and Russian officials. The first big AP scoop this spring on Paul Manafort landed on March 22nd. AP exclusive. Before Trump job, Manafort worked to aid Putin. Quote, before signing up with Donald Trump, Paul Manafort secretly worked for a Russian billionaire with a plan to greatly benefit the Putin government. In 2005, Manafort proposed in a confidential strategy plan that he would influence politics, business dealings, and news coverage inside the United States, Europe, and former Soviet republics to benefit President Vladimir Putin's government. Manafort's pitch memo for this contract said, quote, we are now of the belief that this model can greatly benefit the Putin government if employed at the correct levels with the appropriate commitment to success. Quoting from the AP, quote, Manafort pitched the plans to a Russian billionaire, a close Putin ally, with whom Manafort eventually signed a $10 million annual contract beginning in 2006. So that was the AP's first big scoop on Paul Manafort this spring, which happened in March. I remember when that story broke, I was in a cab on my way to work, and I laughed out loud when I read it on my phone, and I read the headline and the lead of the story out loud to the cab driver who was driving me, and he turned around like this with the wheel and looked at me. I was like, oh, no. It was almost the death of me, literally. But that was Paul Manafort in March. Starting in 2006, ending who knows when, Donald Trump's campaign chairman had an annual contract to promote the interests of Vladimir Putin's government in countries around the world, including the United States. Right? Woo! Boom, from the Associated Press. That was in March. Then 3 weeks later, they had this one, AP exclusive. Manafort firm received Ukraine ledger payment. Now, this one didn't cause any cab drivers to drive off the road. This one did not have the same hair on fire effect as the on a contract to help Putin story. But this one ended up being really important. This one closed the loop on the story that actually got Paul Manafort bounced off the Trump campaign in the first place. It was the New York Times back in August of last year who reported that Paul Manafort appeared on a secret ledger in Ukraine of what appeared to be earmarked payments from the Ukrainian dictator and his party, who Manafort had worked for and who essentially looted that country's treasury during his time in office. New York Times reported last August that Paul Manafort was listed on this ledger of alleged secret payments from the kleptocratic dictator of Ukraine. And after the New York Times reported his name appearing on that ledger, Manafort was gone from the Trump campaign less than a week later. He denied ever receiving those payments, but they ousted him from the campaign. That was August. It took until April. It took a few months, but the Associated Press eventually reported that Manafort wasn't just on the ledger earmarked to receive payments. AP reported in April that he did take those payments. And that ends up being important for where we are now, because there have been all sorts of reports since Paul Manafort mysteriously left the Trump campaign. There have been all sorts of reports that Manafort's money trail all over the world is proving to be very interesting to investigators. NBC's own Richard Engel, you might remember, went to Cyprus and was told in Cyprus that that country's unit for combating money laundering in Cyprus had handed over information on Paul Manafort's money to the U.S. Treasury's Financial Crimes Unit. There have been multiple reports that Paul Manafort has also ended up in the middle of an FBI investigation in Ukraine that's basically an investigation of that country being a kleptocracy. It's an investigation trying to find out what happened to all the money that Manafort's client stole from the government of that country. Where'd all the money go? There's an FBI investigation into that. Manafort has been reported to be tied up in that investigation. So Manafort's money trail. He denies all wrongdoing related to any of his overseas payments, any of his overseas political work. But multiple reports over multiple months suggest that Paul Manafort's international money trail is like life's rich pageant for investigators. And when that simple AP story came out in April about him allegedly getting paid out of Ukraine, that story hit a nerve. Right? There's been all sorts of stories about his money, but this allegation about his payments out of Ukraine, that's what led him to quit the Trump campaign last August. And then AP story in April that the payments actually happened, that led him to do this. That same day the AP story came out, this story was everywhere. Paul Manafort expected to register as foreign agent. Manafort to register as foreign agent. Manafort is now registering as a foreign agent. And at the time that happened in April, it made some waves, right? I mean, you know, critics of the Trump administration chewed on that, right? I mean, here's yet another senior person from the Trump campaign registering retroactively as an agent of a foreign power. Mike Flynn had to register retroactively as a foreign agent after he resigned as national security advisor. And now the Trump campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, had to do it too. Amazing story. Except here's the thing. Manafort never did it. You can search yourself to see who is registered as a foreign agent. It's a good little form. I have it bookmarked on my phone. It's mobile friendly. I do it every day. Every day I type into the search box, Manafort, search. And there is nothing new. Everybody thinks he registered as a foreign agent like Mike Flynn did. Manafort never registered. And here's why this is important. Investigations need source material, right? Investigators need evidence. They need open source material that they dig up on their own. They need data and documents that they pry out of various agencies and out of individuals by various means. They may need intercepts and stuff like that, particularly if it's a cloak and dagger investigation involving espionage, foreign intelligence or something. But really, what they need, really what they desperately want, are witnesses, cooperating witnesses, people who were close enough or high-ranking enough, well-placed enough that they know what happened. And crucially, those people have to be willing to talk. They have to be willing to testify about what they witnessed. And in any investigation, cooperating witnesses often need incentive, right? Why would anybody turn against these people who they were close to now that those people are potentially in trouble, right? If you're close enough to these folks that you saw stuff that's now being investigated and potentially prosecuted, why would you turn against those people? Why would you turn against these people who you used to be involved with? I mean, in this case, any people who were high-ranking in the Trump campaign, they're generally going to be pro-Trump, right? Why would they become cooperating witnesses in an investigation of the Trump campaign? They wouldn't unless they had a real incentive to do it, a real reason to testify. And oftentimes, the threat of prosecution is that reason. That's the incentive. Hey, we got something on you, and we're going to prosecute you for it unless you tell us what you know. That's the general pattern that investigators pursue, especially in big, sprawling cases like this, right? So when Mike Flynn had his lawyer come out and say, Mike Flynn has a story to tell, and he would like to tell it. Remember that? Certainly, General Flynn has a story to tell, and he would very much like to tell it. Remember that statement from Flynn's lawyer? That was couched with a request for immunity from prosecution for Mike Flynn. Today in the Atlantic magazine, you could see the White House spilkis about that. Quote, I think he, meaning President Trump, is worried about Mike Flynn, said one source close to the White House. Trump has questioned whether or not he should have fired Flynn. They don't know what Flynn's going to say. When Flynn did retroactively register as an agent of a foreign power after he was fired, that was a sign that it wasn't like, oh, it slipped his mind that he'd been an agent of a foreign power before. No, that was a sign that he was talking to the Department of Justice. Right, the Department of Justice has jurisdiction over the Foreign Agent Registration Act. That was a sign that he was talking to the Department of Justice with attention to his own legal misbehavior in terms of representing foreign governments without previously registering like he was supposed to do. And Mike Flynn registered, and everybody thinks Paul Manafort registered, but Manafort did not. In a statement, Paul Manafort said he had consulted with federal authorities and had received formal guidance from those federal authorities. The relevant federal authorities here, again, would be the Department of Justice. They oversee the Foreign Agent Registration Act. Paul Manafort never registered, apparently thanks to the guidance he got from federal authorities. Federal authorities told him not to register? You're fine, you're okay, buddy, don't worry about it. I mean, given what's been widely reported about him and his money, you think he might really have to be worried about it. I mean, anything that can be used to prosecute a witness can be used as pressure on that witness to flip. But in Paul Manafort's case, the Department of Justice appears to be alleviating that pressure on him, not tightening it down. And it is happening very quietly. Again, everybody thinks they made him retroactively register as a foreign agent. They did not. Now, the head of the Justice Department is Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions has made public statements to the effect that he is recused from all Justice Department matters that may relate to the Trump campaign. That recusal is in question now because of his role in Jim Comey's firing. Senate Democrats wrote to the Deputy Attorney General today asking this, quote, Attorney General Sessions recused himself from any role in the investigation of Russia's involvement in the 2016 elections and the Trump campaign because of his close relationship with the campaign and his own undisclosed contacts with Russian officials. Yet, your memorandum is addressed to him, and according to public reporting, he participated in the decision to fire Director Comey. Did you and Attorney General Sessions ever discuss whether it would be improper for him to be involved in the dismissal of the lead investigator of a politically sensitive investigation from which he was recused? Yeah, did you ever talk about that? I mean, Jeff Sessions is already under fire for whether or not he really is recused from overseeing these investigations. If you're firing the lead investigator, You're not recused from that investigation. After the Flynn foreign payment story came out, Jeff Sessions was asked if his stated recusal from Trump campaign matters would also involve him being recused from matters involving Mike Flynn. He said yes, that would also include him being recused from matters involving Mike Flynn. But what about matters involving Paul Manafort? Is Jeff Sessions keeping himself out of anything at DOJ involving Paul Manafort or not? Is he recused from matters involving Trump's campaign chairman? Because there are interesting questions about what's happening with the Department of Justice and Paul Manafort, right? Is Jeff Sessions involved in any work at the Department of Justice concerning Paul Manafort, or is he recused? We can report tonight that the Justice Department will not say. We started asking yesterday. We asked throughout the day today. We have asked it 5 times in 5 different ways, including me making the request myself personally multiple times in as many different ways as I could think of it. They will not say whether or not he's recused. He is recused on Flynn, they say. He is recused on things related to the Trump campaign broadly. They won't say about Manafort. So I started this by saying, buckle up, this is going to be chaotic. There is a real question as to whether or not the Attorney General has taken back his recusal, whether he has decided to unrecuse himself from Department of Justice matters and FBI matters concerning the Trump campaign and particularly the Russia investigation. There is a real question about that, and that is bizarre. It is additionally bizarre that on the Trump campaign manager in particular, they will not say if he is recused or not. Something strange is up about whether and how they are leaning on him as a potential cooperating witness, the leverage they may or may not be exerting on him. But as the focus turns to obstruction of justice, watch the president, knowing that the only remedy for that is impeachment. Watch further down the chain, too. We'll be right back.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.